So let's get started. I'll just share my screen now. Okay, so if I go to Google homepage, I just Google TechUI. Okay. Then just open a slide deck. Okay. Okay, I will just use this slide deck as an anchor to help us run through the topics today. Okay, so first, what is TechUI? It's a free RPA tool, and it's also open source. Then what's RPA? So RPA in general, it's not the hardware robotics where you have the robotic arm to do all this hardware automation in factory. RPA in today's terms, it means software robots. And what can the software robot do for you? So let's say you have a business process or work process, which you find is very repetitive, very take up a lot of your time, and it doesn't require a lot of skilled training to do, and it's based on certain rules. So this type of processes, actually, you can outsource it to RPA to do it for you. Okay, so for example, it depends on which RPA software you're looking at. In the market, there are many, whether it's commercial, whether it's open source. Most of them, what they do is they provide a workflow visual type or diagram, a flow chart where you design your RPA robot to run. For TechUI, the difference is we actually try to use a human language way to represent workflow. So your robot will be like maybe a Word document, a text file of what you want to do, and then you run the RPA. So maybe I can do a demo right now in show you, in 4 languages how TechUI can run. Okay, so this is a video done by my colleague Ruth. So let me run it and full screen. Okay, so because it's designed to use a human language syntax, it means that, wherever you are in the world, although we know that English is quite a most commonly used language, one of the most commonly used language, but wherever you are in the world, you can actually write your automation robot in your native language, like maybe Japanese, maybe German, maybe Chinese, or let's say Malay, and all these are possible. So right now, what I'm playing in the video is a demo of, let's say, going to Google and collect the stock price, and it's done in English. So as it runs, you can see the RPA robot goes to a Google web page and then does a search. Okay, so the instruction is simply go to the web page and you type the search as whatever stock symbol, and then you read the price, and then you save the price to maybe a CSV file, and then you repeat as long as you have a list of the spreadsheet what the stock symbol you want to collect. Okay, now it's searching for Apple and then getting the stock price from the website. So this is an example of RPA, and what you see on the screen now is the same thing but in different national languages of Singapore, like in Chinese. That's literally what you write in your robot script. You write in Chinese, and later on there's also Hindi, there's also Malay. And recently, there's an Indian user. He speaks the Malayalam language, and I think about 5% of the Indian folks uses that language. So he just created a new language for Malayalam in TechUI. So now, people can write in his language, right? So that's a demo. Then what I want to show you next is, we know that RPA is something that can benefit a lot of people potentially, but so far what the commercial providers and most of the RPA tools provider do is they try to build a super RPA app, and then they try to encourage people to download and use it and learn how to use it. But we have a different view on what's the best way to make RPA more accessible. To us, it's better to bring RPA to where the users are so that they can do RPA using the tools that they are already very familiar with, that they use on a day-to-day basis, okay? So now I will share my screen on the other laptop that I connected on. It's a Windows laptop. So I'll share screen here and start sharing there, okay? Okay, so now what you see is my Windows laptop, and I'm going to open an Excel spreadsheet, which is similar to what you see in the video example, where you define the list of stocks that you want to download the price for. So, you can enter the list of stocks you want to download the price, and then over here with the TechUI RPA add-in, you can choose the robot you want to use to automate this data. Right? So after I choose it, I can edit using Microsoft Word to edit the robot. So today, if you are doing an RPA project, what you experience would be you have your business process owner, where you have to design your business process document, where you list all the steps to be done. Then you pass this document over to the RPA developer. A lot of times it's your IT department person. Then that person will map it to, let's say, UiPath or whatever robot in the automation anywhere. And then you have your two documents that manages this business process. So we believe that actually there's a better way to do it. Can this business process document and the RPA robot be the same document? So turns out it actually can be done. So if you look at this example robot, it's actually the same as what you saw in the video just now. You go to Google, you do a search for the stock price, and you read the value, and then you save it to a CSV file. Okay, so now I'll close it. And over here, you can see, okay, I want to search stock price, but which stock to search for? That's where you can define your data to be used by your robot in Excel. And this part here, object repository, might look a bit scary, but actually there are tools that help you record this value. So these are like IC numbers, which, if you are a citizen of any country, you have a unique number that tells the government or anyone else who you are. So everything on a website or everything you see on your desktop, they have their own IC number. It's just using the tools that RPA give you to note down these numbers. So in this case, these are the IC number for the search button and as for the stock price. So what I do is I go back to the data here. I just need to choose what data to use. So let me go to the other computer. Okay, then I choose what is the object repository, which is the so-called the website element data. So based on this data, I can run an automation directly from Microsoft Word and Excel already. So let's click run. So when I click run, what will happen is from Microsoft Word and Excel, based on the data you define and the process document you define, and which you can share with your colleagues, you can automate the process of running RPA already. So now it's trying to run using TechUI, the backend, to do a search for those stock prices and then save it as a CSV file. So all these, controlling your computer, your mouse, your keyboard, your web browser, your desktop apps, whether it's Outlook, Word, and so on, all this is RPA. Collectively, we call it RPA. Okay, so the robot has finished running. Let's see the output. So it generated a results spreadsheet here. Okay, so here you can see, oh, okay, he has managed to capture all the stock price value for these few stock tickers, right? So, and then as a further next step, right, actually, all these values, you can further automate to a next part of the process where you are able to do something with the generated CSV file. It could be sending an email to a customer, sending an email to your boss, to your colleagues, and so on, okay? I'll cover more with more industry use cases and example as we go along, okay? So here, maybe I can paste the slide deck. So anyway, Anna will share. Yeah, she'll share. Anyway, okay, I'll go straight here. So SES will share with the participant the link to the slide deck, and you can refer to that. So over here, there are other examples of RPA using TechUI. You know, it can be scraping your Forex numbers from some website and some table. And based on the data you collected, you know, you have some maybe CSV file or spreadsheet, and then you can use RPA to automate sending this info automatically. So for example, when you see the screen, the mouse and the keyboard moving, all this is done automatically by the robot. It's not, I'm actually typing it, no, it's done by the robot. Okay, then even including attaching a file, all this is done by RPA. So this is like pretty much the same. I mean, RPA tools is like that. All the RPA tools can do whatever I show here. Yeah, I will cover more on the what's unique about TechUI, which can make it very easy and very interesting to try out. Okay. So other examples would be, you know, automating some income tax filing for your clients or downloading of the income tax results and processing for a client. Automating filling up a Microsoft Word document. Sometimes, you know, as part of the business process, based on certain input, you want to fill up a Microsoft Word template and print the document. So for such process, you can actually use RPA to do it. Rather than you spend one whole afternoon to sit down, based on your list, you slowly go through one by one and type the template and fill up. Then that's a waste of your time. So all this you can do. Then even grocery ordering, you can use RPA. What my wife do is that I create a robot for her using TechUI. So she has a spreadsheet where she track, you know, for this week, what grocery she want to order. So every Sunday, she'll run the robot to help her place the order for the grocery for the week. So, you know, use cases like this, actually, you can do it. Even your wife or your husband, you know, can use RPA. And if she doesn't use RPA to do it, wow, I tell you, she has to spend 15 minutes every week just to insert all these items to the cart. And 15 minutes to a mama who has a toddler, it's a lot of time. So that's a very precious time, 15 minutes every week. So she used RPA to do that. You want to do OCR, you want to do document processing, that's also doable using RPA, that's also doable using TechUI, okay? You know, you want to do mass cost registration, that's also doable, okay? Now I will go straight into more about the users and what are the key differentiators, okay? So if you look at some of the users, it's pretty broad base. We have people from US, from Brazil, Singapore, India using it. For example, Mercedes-Benz, they are rolling out RPA through their Atlanta IT Innovation Hub. So when they are using the commercial RPA, it can be very hard to have use cases. Why I say that, whenever you embark on the RPA and digital automation initiative, the first question people ask is the cost of doing the RPA, lesser than the gains of the RPA? If you spend the time to do the RPA, does the time save? Does the productivity increase outweigh the cost? And if it doesn't, right, then the project will never take off, right? Because who will want to do a losing deal and losing project, like lose money? That's just very hard to do. So, but when you use open source and some of the RPA tools that are free, like TechUI, what happens is the cost of your license becomes zero. right? And the cost of the hardware suddenly also becomes zero. Why? Because you are using your individual employees' laptop to do RPA. You don't have to purchase additional server, additional cloud hardware or whatever. Your RPA is running on your local desktop. So the cost of hardware is zero, cost of software is zero. Then the cost of services also almost zero because it's an internal cost. You don't have to engage an external consulting firm to do, right? So, the tech lead actually ended up getting a lot of use cases, and they already, for their first month of deployment, they already saved over one headcount for just their first month. The process they automate already saved one headcount worth of salary. Yeah. And he's looking to grow it to a larger user group. Yeah. So that's for the US. And there's some other user story from Brazil, from EY as well. Then maybe I can talk about Hidayat. He's based in Singapore. He's a supply chain analyst for one of the shoe companies here. Although they use Microsoft Power Automate, but he also used TechUI for some of the workflows, because for some workflows to use Microsoft Power Automate, you got to pay for a more expensive premium version. So that's the strategy where many, whether it's SME or MNC, they use. Sometimes you might use traditional commercial RPA as your main offering across the enterprise, but gradually you start to introduce the open source and free version of those tools that you can gradually actually swap out some of the processes that can be done by the free robots, rather than paying a lot of money for the expensive robots. Okay, so all these are different examples. We also have students using it. Yeah. Okay. This is like kind of like the product roadmap of TechUI. So in 2016, there's alpha release. Basically, it runs on Mac, it runs on Linux, it runs on Windows, unlike the commercial RPA tools, which always run on Windows, right? From TechUI, you can call Python, which means you have full access to machine learning libraries or AI ML models. For those of you from data science who loves R language, you can call R language from TechUI as well. There's also a Python version of TechUI. That one is a personal project, and it still remains as a personal project. I think the programmers, they can pretty much figure out the solution. So it doesn't need a lot of my time to support the folks there after work. So that's still a personal project. It's one of the most popular tool for RPA on Python. Okay. And when you have a Python version of TechUI, it means that anyone with a Jupyter notebook can run TechUI. There's also a cloud version of TechUI. So now if I paste something into the group chat, you can try it also on your phone or on your laptop. I will paste it in the, I think the group chat, is it? This chat is here. Okay, to panelists and attendees. So now I'll paste a link to the group chat. So if you click on the link, what you see, whether it's on your mobile phone or whether it's on your, let's say, laptop or desktop, after you click on the link, what you'll be seeing is actually a Colab notebook. Colab means basically you are using Google's hardware to do RPA. Okay, so there are just 3 lines here. So you can click the first line. That will set up the environment for RPA on the Google Cloud hardware. And because it's a free cloud hardware, it doesn't save all your settings after you run. After you run, maybe after a few hours, it will just release the memory. Then the next time you run, you got to click run to install it again. But that's a free cloud hardware. That's why it doesn't persist. There are paid versions which help you persist as well. Then from a mobile phone, from your desktop, you can actually run RPA through a web browser. So this one will take maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I'll just let it run in the background. Then I come back here first. Then there's also the Microsoft Word and Excel RPA, which we released last month. So the Word and Excel RPA is what I showed you earlier on the collecting the stock price. and my colleague Ruth is rapidly iterating these two apps. I think probably should release one new version every month. And in the version 2, the Microsoft Word is pretty interesting. Instead of just click ABC or what, you can actually click and you can, there's a small camera icon where you can click on the taskbar, and then you can capture a screenshot of what you want to click on. And with that, you have a click followed by a small image snapshot of what to click on. And then, you can visually using computer vision to automate your business process already. Okay, let's see whether this is already done. Okay, so, take a couple of minutes. Once it's done, you can press a play on the second line, which will run a RPA on the cloud. So this RPA workflow, it's going to, let's say, a GitHub page. Then it shows you what's the license type for the GitHub project. And then you'll download the source code for this project for you. And which also means that you can actually store your RPA robots on the cloud anywhere else, like using GitHub Gist or any other service where you can store text files on the cloud. In this case, I use GitHub Gist. Yeah. So, sorry, I use one of the link for the demo for TechUI, but you can also use GitHub Gist. So after running the robot, I just close this or remove clutter. I press the third button and immediately I can see, oh, there's a zip file there already, which means that actually using such a cloud RPA, you can configure it to do mass download of whatever things or collect data from different sources. And then you can, at the end, you can just press the play at the last part to save it to your computer or your handphone. Yeah, and then the best thing is you don't have to pay for all this cloud resource. Google is paying for you to run all this RPA. Yeah, so these are things which you can already do now, but we want to still continue to iterate and improve how RPA can run on the cloud. So later this year, we hope to be able to find a way that it can run more seamlessly. You can maybe sign up for a trial account with Google or Microsoft, and then you can save your robots. You don't have to install every time, but we'll figure a way out. Yeah. And once that is done, we hope to introduce an Android and mobile phone app for iPhone as well to make it easier for people to do RPA from their phones. Okay. Then this one is talking about, Microsoft, there's a Power Automate desktop that's free, but there's still a limitation because the interface is a bit like UiPath. It's quite complicated to learn. So maybe some folks will still prefer to do RPA using the Word add-in that I showed just now and the Excel add-in. Okay. Then another common comparison point will be UiPath. So UiPath, main difference between TechUI and UiPath, I guess, would be it can run on different operating system. It's free. There's no restriction. And in terms of learning curve, maybe one day to learn TechUI and start to use it. For UiPath, you need 1 week. No, there's no doubt about it. UiPath is a great tool, but a lot of time it has a lot of features and options that end up you need to spend more time to learn and start to be productive with the tool. Okay. And I think one of the main differentiator for TechUI is, although it's open source, it's free. There's a 24-hour soft SLA, which means if you raise an issue on GitHub, we'll usually respond within 24 hours, 365 days a week. When you raise we also have our Telegram group chat. So I can paste that to the group. Let me see. Okay, I can paste it here. So those of you who want to explore more about TechUI, you can join the group chat, whether you are an existing user or you are a potential user that you want to see what are the stuff that people talk about. Yeah, there's concerning TechUI users. You can join the group chat. So usually for the group chat, when people post a question, we'll answer within a few hours, and some of the more experienced users will give more in-depth answer based on their experiences. Then if not, There's also a weekly Zoom call where we meet users one-to-one to explore and troubleshoot their RPA problems. And all this comes free. Yeah, so this is something which none of the commercial RPA tools or open or source RPA tools can do. They can't offer this level of support and service for their non-paying users because it doesn't make sense. They have a business model, so they can't do that. But for AI Singapore, it's different. We are funded by government ultimately and taxpayers ultimately. So we focus more on the community impact versus the, is there a viable business model? Is there how much revenue is this project generating? We don't have a revenue model. It's just community impact. So if we can empower users and make RPA more accessible, then it's something that's we consider the job well done already. It's not like, oh, we must hit 1 million revenue. No, there's no revenue and cost for this project. There's cost, but there's no revenue. Yeah. These are some of the other comparison points. What I heard is that from many UiPath users is that usually when they first come across UiPath, it comes across as very easy because drag and drop. But when they actually start to use it, they realize to deal with real world use cases and processes, they need to write code also to do that. So sometimes it's like you already have a sunk cost and invested interest. It's very hard to switch out from an invested tool, right? Otherwise, how to justify the initial investment? So it become a situation where no choice. I got to learn, and then you learn programming, and then you apply lah. Yeah. So so now before I go on more to where the project is and more details on the type of processes, let me take a quick look at the Q&A. Can this RPA tool handle browser pop-ups? So if you mean pop-up as a new tab, yes, you can use a pop-up step to do that. If you mean pop-up as a browser dialog box, that's also possible. I think you probably are an experienced user, that's why you can ask this question. So as you know, in a normal browser automation, a pop-up is a blocking process. So in a normal situation, you cannot handle it. But in TechUI's case, there's a fallback to using computer vision, which means you're actually automating the clicking of the button and the pop-up using computer vision. So in that case, even if it's a pop-up dialog box, you can also handle that. Okay, are we able to set it up on the Synology? I don't know what Synology. I'll just ask, can you elaborate to the poster? Gerald is asking, can they handle canvas style browsers where elements cannot be selected? I haven't come across this situation, but if there's a situation element from the web browser, you can't select it, then chances are you can't actually talk to it from the back end. Then you will have to automate it using computer vision. Yeah. Can it read JPEG or PDF file? Can you use the basic apps that you already given by your IT folks for your laptop to do it? Yeah. Okay. Can. So let me just go back here. So in terms of where the project is, this is the live map of the distribution. Mostly we have users in US and India and Singapore. Then the rest will be all over the 80 countries in the world. The download count in the last 3 months is, what took previously 2 years. So we are growing quite fast, the community. And user base in terms of the top few countries and the top industries. Now, no surprise, finance banking, that will always be your number one sector for RPA. Why? Because in finance banking, you have the volume and you have the compliance requirement. And because of your compliance requirement, a lot of processes that you do in banking, in accounting, in auditing is very rule-based. It's not like you have a situation where you have to do it, decide, hey, how do you feel about this? Should it be a go or no go? You don't have something like this. Usually the process will be black and white. Above a certain threshold, you do this. Below a certain number, you do that. There's unlikely to be gray area where you exercise creativity, So because of that, it becomes a great fit for RPA. Right, healthcare, as some of your you guys here from the healthcare sector and healthcare health tech sector, you'll be aware why healthcare is actually so popular for RPA, because in healthcare sector, a lot of software used are legacy software. It's not the sector where you use the most cutting edge software. And when you use legacy software, it means that the apps are actually living in silos. They don't actually talk to each other through API or integrate. And that's where RPA comes in handy. You don't have to redesign their whole API in order to automate. Maybe you scan the image for a patient. You want to file that scanned image to the next software in your healthcare ERP, but you got to do it manually every time. But with RPA, from the scanning all the way to filing that record for the scanned image and typing in the patient's details, you can automate the whole process using RPA. Okay. Then the top few processes would be accounting, finance. I give an example. Let's say there's one of the top few accounting firms in Singapore. They have been running TechUI in production since 2019 March. And when I last checked with them last month, they're still having those robots in production. So what they do is accounting firm deal with a lot of clients. So they help their clients manage the interactions with the tax revenue authority in Singapore. So what they do is they'll use TechUI to log into the tax revenue website and then use OCR to assess what type of documents that the tax department of the government sends to their client. And based on that OCR scanning, they will decide what to do and route to which of the people in their team to do the further follow-up. And for a lot of them doesn't need follow-up, then they will just audit it and check it somewhere, but just move on. Instead of having one person, right, always sitting there to download and see all this document, they can automate it. Okay, and for CRM and onboarding, that's for example, when you have a new customer, sometimes in accounting, you need to know your customer process. That means you do background check on your customer, whether this is a valid guy or not. Yeah, and sometimes you got to deal with let's say a lawyer. You want to check the background of the list of lawyer. Is he actually a real registered lawyer? So Ministry of Law website actually maintains a list of registration of a registered lawyer. So you can use RPA to automate checking all this information rather than one person go through your 500 names in your spreadsheet and then manually search for all the lawyer names. Yeah. So HR as well. HR is also a common scenario where you use RPA. Why? Because each time you onboard a new employee, a lot of processes to be done is actually similar. You create your employee email account, you create your employee onboarding pack, your employee software accounts. All these are similar across the breadth of your employees for new hires. So HR is actually one area where we are seeing a lot of pick up for RPA. If we break out to the different processes, it will be something like that. In terms of features for TechUI, ease of use, flexibility usually are the top few criteria. Then the good thing about TechUI is there's a reusability built in. So when you have a workflow, you can modularize. Maybe you create a robot just to log in, and then with that robot, in all your other robots, you can call this small robot to log in. Then you do your other steps, for example. And when you can modularize, it means, right, usually in your company or department, there's one of you who either from IT background or more tech savvy. The person can create all these templates for the rest to use. So it's become very easy for the whole department to take advantage of RPA and automation technologies. Then there are things like object repository, where you can define different things on the screen. What is their special unique number that you can tell the robot to click on? Yeah, so all this can be done by the tech-savvy person on the team. Then other things like data table, you define what data to automate on. This one is more for the technical department, the IT department, you want to create custom functions, all this is doable. Yeah, and some of the things on the roadmap. But this one is a bit duplicated with what I'm covering here. Basically, the gist for TechUI would be, instead of a centralized app where we do RPA, we actually try to make it more decentralized, where we can, put RPA in different tools that people already use, like Microsoft Word, like Google Docs. This one I'm still working on it. I have a prototype already, but maybe later this month we'll launch. And then whether it's Mac, Windows, or Linux, you can use TechUI. Yeah. And very interestingly, what I found is that, even competitors, open source RPA also have competitors, right? But we find that TechUI is so versatile that even competitors are building integrations with the tool. So just last week, OpenBots, they built integration with TechUI. So in their latest release, where you download their orchestrator, you can actually start a TechUI project and then orchestrate it centrally. So you can do that already. And other providers like OpenRPA, in 1 to 2 months, they also will be integrating with TechUI so that you can orchestrate TechUI from their open flow. And also tonight, I'm meeting up and coming RPA influencer from India. His name is called Nivet. So he's very familiar with Robocop. So he's exploring whether he can build a library for Robocop that's for TechUI, and it will help the Robocop users by making use of TechUI. They are able to write their automation workflow in their native languages, like different dialects of India, and maybe in French, in German. Today you cannot. Today, when you are, let's say you're in IT, you will know, right? If you're a developer, if you're a programmer, all programming languages is in English, right? That's just the way it is. But with TechUI, you can actually write your program in your native language. So that can be something interesting for folks that are not familiar with English or not so tech savvy. It'll be nice twist to be able to write your robot, to write your program in your local language. So these are things we'll be doing. I guess, I think I talked too much already. Maybe one last thing I can share about would be, how does TechUI click on something on the screen? So there are 3 ways. One way is you provide the web unique identifier. Another way is you provide an image snapshot of what you want to click on. Third way is you provide the XY coordinates. Yeah. So the tool is designed so that there are multiple ways to get to the same outcome. Yeah. Then you have redundancy. If you design something that die one path to the outcome, right? For sure, you'll have a lot of scenario where your solution will not work because it's too rigid. But you've designed, let's say, at least 3 ways to get to the same outcome. Depending on different scenario, you still at least will have one way that works. Yeah, that's why for users, when they vote, they say it's very versatile, it's very robust, very reliable. Yeah, that's the reason. It's designed for redundancy in that aspect. Yeah, I think I talked too much already, so I will just stop screen sharing, and maybe I see from the group chat what question. Okay. Oh yeah. I think Gerald agreed to my comment earlier on UiPath that although it's drag and drop interface, but actually when you deal with a lot of real business use cases, you actually can't drag and drop the solution completely. You still need to write some code. Yeah. Okay, Fan is asking, can you use in database management system like Oracle? Yes, you can. You can do it in 2 ways. The first way is use it using Oracle front end. You automate the user interface. The second way is you use it. TechUI can also run SQL statement. If you are interested to run SQL statement, by all means go ahead. Yeah, and you write your SQL statement for TechUI to run. But I usually don't recommend that way. I mean, most people won't have access to your company database with read and write access, So I think that's not a user access privilege that most people have. So most people probably from the front end of the app, they access the database. So you can do that, okay? So I'll now run through the other questions here. Please keep it coming. And let me see, those answered already. So great. Okay. So now there are 11 open questions. So how does TechUI handle exceptional like errors? So by default, TechUI will auto wait for the element to appear and subjected to a timeout of 10 seconds. Yeah, but that timeout you can change, right? So if after 10 seconds that something doesn't appear, then you'll throw error. Yeah. Then when you throw error, you automatically capture a screenshot of how the screen looks like. So you know, hey, you want to click on the submit button, but the submit button is not there, right? So you'll capture a screenshot and tell you. Then you can go back and check, hey, why is the submit button not there? Is it in your robot? You accidentally miss one step, for example. And it's hard to miss that because in TechUI, there's also a Chrome web extension. When you just Google TechUI Chrome extension, you have that already. And from the Chrome extension, you can record. And after recording, that generated robot is something you can run right away already. So very hard to miss steps. But in case you miss steps, you auto capture an error for you. Okay, so Eric is saying this is a NAS storage. Okay, it's a server. Oh, yeah, you definitely can install TechUI in a NAS storage server. That's because it can run on Linux, it can run on Windows and Mac. So Raspberry Pi, I'm not so sure yet, but I need to test. But for Windows Server, Linux and Mac, no problem. And run VM, no problem. Okay. Able to handle WinSep or, okay. Is able to handle both. So Gerald Day is asking whether you can automate SAP from the desktop app and whether you can automate SAP from the window browser. So both also can. For the desktop app, you'll be purely using computer vision and keyboard. For the web interface, you can choose using computer vision, or you can choose to automate through the backdoor. TechUI is able to open a backdoor to Chrome, to Microsoft Edge, and automate it from the backdoor. Maybe I put it, how do I put it in a more less technical way? Okay, let's say you have a browser. If suddenly I tell you the RPA robot can have access to all the data in your browser, you'll be scared, right? Because how can a robot have access to everything your browser load? It's very dangerous, because any data your browser have, your robot can access, right? So in order to do that, we have to enable a backdoor. But to enable a backdoor, it means that the user have to first take the step to open it. And of course, for RPA, you don't need to do what configuration. You just double click to run. Then the backdoor will open for you already to Chrome. And then you can automate it automatically already. But you need to know that for a robot to automate a browser, there's a backdoor that's open and it's by intention, okay? Yeah, then you can automate it. Do we face performance constraints that we are using desktop? No, definitely not. This is a real concern. So when I developed TechUI, and even until now, I always use the most lousiest model I have of Mac to do my development, right? So that I know in the worst case scenario, how bad and how slow it is. Yeah, so when I use such an old laptop from 4 or 5 years ago, it still runs okay. So it shouldn't need a high power laptop. Yeah. Can this be used for testing software compose mail? Yes, of course. Interestingly, I am seeing more and more users from the test automation world that's using TechUI for testing. It's interesting because there are so many test automation software out there already, but why are they using it? But the feedback I heard is that those automation software can be too complicated to use, but TechUI can let them quickly automate something very fast without going through too many configuration and settings. Yeah, that's why they choose to use TechUI. And in fact, when I was in DBS in 2015 and 16, I was working in their test automation department. So we have a row of laptops to automate testing at scale, and that's where I learned all the foundation for RPA. It's all about digital automation. So that's where I learned it. Yeah. Okay. What are the best secure code practice while developing RPA? First is, you got to think about your company scenario, whether in your company, how open they are to store password as a part of the robot. if you ask me, I would say don't ever store it as part of your robot. You can always open up a prompt for user to key in the password at the start. And after the website login, whether it's 2FA or what, then the robot do its job for next 1 hour, 2 hours. That's fine. Yeah, so I usually don't advise storing it locally. But even if you store it locally, by right, there's no security breach or so, by right lah, because your laptop supposedly should have all the 2FA or password access already. So any outsider who pick up your laptop shouldn't be able to log into your laptop in the first place to access your robot. Yeah, if that person can access your robot, it means that person can access your secure and confidential documents already, right? So, so that kind of situation, it's really up to you to weigh. Yeah. So how does it handle info which has to be secret like password? Okay, one way would be don't store it, if you can. But if for some reason you want to store it, maybe you can check with the app provider or your IT department to provision you a special login ID for robots. At least if something goes wrong, it's the robot, something wrong there. Then you know where to check. Yeah, if that's something acceptable, but otherwise don't store it. Alternatively, you can store it as an object repository. You can, like Windows as a credential manager and Mac as a key store manager. You can also store it there and use TechUI to get it from there. That's also doable, but a bit no point, because to get there, right, you need somebody to manually log in with the password also. So you got to store the password somewhere anyway. So what's the point of hiding one password and then you got to store another password elsewhere? So it's a bit, but it really depends on how you want to do it. Okay, so Gerald is asking, does it have orchestrator like to do mass deployment of script and robot? Okay, right now there isn't, but OpenBots RPA tool has already implemented that, and it's free for people running it on premise. Yeah, so you can use that, and later on, OpenRPA will also implement that. If the user demand is strong, then maybe we can do an in-house orchestrator. Yeah, but for now, we are focusing more on creating the apps for the plugins for Google Docs and on cloud and mobile phones. If we can get those things right first, then it will help the individual RPA user more than an orchestrator, which is more of a mass deployment setup. And now there's already solutions like OpenBots, which is free already. So no point for us to develop something similar. Yeah. Can it be scheduled as a schedule job? Yes, you can use Windows Task Scheduler for Windows. You can use Mac Contab or Linux Contab. You can use also third-party scheduling jobs. Some people don't like the task scheduler interface. They can just use a third-party app. And some people use Airflow to do that. Yeah, there are various third-party tools to have a very nice timetable for you to schedule your job other than the Windows Task Scheduler. Yeah, I know that we are running towards 6 p.m. already. So if any one of you got to run for another commitment, please go ahead. Those who can stay, I'll continue answer the questions. And there'll be a recording which SCS will be posting online somewhere that then the SCS will share back with the attendees here. So you won't miss out any of the questions and answers, okay? What's the limitation of RPA? Yes, there's a main limitation of RPA. That is, it cannot automate anything that's not rule-based. But that limitation can somewhat be patched, okay, by using AI. So let's say you have a document where you want to process loan application, or you have a situation where you want to process a document with fuzzy logic. So if you use pure RPA, cannot, but the RPA can help you get the inputs from the document and pass it through a trained AI model and then give you the output. That's what UiPath is doing with document understanding and AI fabric. And we have a user at one of the large passenger flight company. They are using commercial RPA tools, but they are now exploring whether it can be done, the same thing can be done, like document understanding can be done using TechUI. So he has a data science and ML team to do that. So they are now exploring that. I believe it can be done. They just need to train a good model to classify the documents correctly, and then you can process the documents correctly already. And another main limitation of RPA, I find, I'm saying more in terms of a general user, is that most of the commercial RPA tools, they are either too expensive or their free version there's very lousy or no support, or it's very hard to implement. Yeah. So I think that is more of a usability limitation. So you can try out the different tools. Now it's quite a very robust and mature market. So there are many vendors, or whether open source or commercial RPA, you can try it out. Then you can find the tool that best fit you. Yeah. So that's the main limitation. Is there a day training for TechUI? Now there isn't, but my colleague is working on the Udemy style course, which people can do and self-learn in their own pace. We are estimating it to maybe sometime in June. We will launch it. It's a free course. Is SES going to answer something? Okay, no, okay, then I'll continue. So any documentation or video help the self-learning? The self-learning course to be released, but what I can do now is I can paste the homepage for TechUI. I'll paste it to the group chat. Okay, under the group chat. Okay, so from the group chat, you'll be able to see the documentation link, which will run you through how to install and configure and use it. Actually, no need configure, I just install and can use already. Yeah, you'll see some things like demos, examples. There's also a video of a similar webinar like this. There's also the slide deck that you saw just now. And there's also a link to the weekly Zoom Q&A and a Telegram group chat, which are very good channels for getting answers. I can tell you, RPA is a type of domain where it's not something you learn, attend a course, suddenly you become a guru and you become an expert, because you're dealing with such a infinitely huge possibility of things to automate. So you can't possibly learn every single thing under the sun in the course of training. So what happened is the post-training, is there a support channel to help you answer your specific scenario? That's, I think, is very important. Yeah. So that's where TechUI and the team at AI Singapore doing RPA, we hope to achieve by, when you download it and you start learning it, it's the start of a relationship where if you have questions, you can feel free to ask us. There's no cost to attending the Zoom course. There's no cost to use the Telegram. And even the Telegram, recently we launched a chatbot. So if you feel like asking a chatbot a question, you can just ping the chatbot. And the chatbot is built on using the NLP model. For those technical folks, is a PyTorch. So because over the last 4 years, there's a lot of GitHub issues that TechUI has come across, and I think almost 1,000. So each time there's an issue that user asks, I'll reply the question, and then I'll rename the title for the issue to the correct question. So my colleague, I think yesterday or the day before, he trained the NLP model based on all these issues data. And based on that, right, actually you can create a chatbot for Q&A already, because there's sufficient data to do this. So he already released it to production in the Telegram group chat. So people can just ask a question. The chatbot will reply, hey, this GitHub issues looks like the same question you're asking, and here's the answer. Then the chatbot will ask you yes or no. Then if you yes or no, this input will be feedback to the chatbot for the NLP model to be retrained to improve the accuracy.
Yeah. Ken, sorry, I need to interrupt you for a while. I think we are running out of time.
Okay.
So I see a lot of very good questions. So I just want to say that I'm really impressed with this audience who asked very good questions, and some of them are very technical, which is fantastic. My one advice that I need to close this session, because I think we cannot go on, because we got other activities.
Sure.
So I advise the audience is, for those who have questions, you could get in touch with Ken directly, especially through the Telegram chat group.
Yes.
In fact, I saw just now halfway through, already suddenly a lot of people joined the Telegram group, and I saw the Telegram group grow, which is fantastic. So I say that I'm so glad we have so many questions, but we just couldn't answer all of them in one session. But I want to say a big thank you to Ken for availing yourself and coming out with and sharing with us, your own invention that have gotten so much traction in the open source community. So thank you so much, Ken, and congratulations. And I want to say a big thank you to all the participants, all the audience for joining us today.